Tell me, are you ready to find your weird way? Weird was a concept that was spoken of long ago. It meant fate, it meant destiny, it meant your path in life. I'm your host, Dean Bentley, and I am here to explore how you can connect to your own path in life, to know the essence of your own soul, to connect to that single spark that lives within the deepest recesses of your being that says, this is why I am here, to go beyond the limitations, the constrictions of the modern world, and open you to the possibilities and the potentiality of what is possible within this world. Join me as we dive deep on the weird way. Your work is right in this moment. There is nothing else that you need to be doing or some other place that you need to be. This is a reminder for those of you on this path, you need to be right where you are. This is where you're meant to be. This is your medicine right now. And if you're existing where you are and you're resisting that, well, there's a reason that it's showing up in your reality. It's here to offer you something. And perhaps you don't like what it is offering, but there is this knowing that everything that is offered to us, we can see as a test or a challenge or something here to serve us. And from that place, we can be empowered. And if we're in this place of resisting what is, if we're ignoring what is before us, if we're still avoiding that thing that is in front of us, we're not growing, we're not evolving. And the reason that it is still in your reality is because there's still lessons to receive. And weird ways, if you're being like, I don't want to hear this, I don't want to hear that's great. Great. This is where we're going this week because it's needed to be said. It's needed to be said as a reminder for myself and for everyone else on this path, because there can be this temptation to have the fantasy of everything perfect and it all working out, and if I'm good enough or if I'm there, that then finally it's going to be perfect and everything's going to be okay. And yet, when something isn't that way, we can take it personally. We can say, this is something means something about me, or there's something wrong here, or I did something wrong. And perhaps there's a grain of truth in some of that, but that can be a very self-defeating prophecy to go down, where you're looking at why you're to blame, or what you didn't do, or why you did it wrong. And you can do that. And there may be some response in that to take accountability and be like, oh, maybe I didn't make the best decision there, or maybe something is unexpressed within myself. And the reason I say that is because when something is shown up in our lives, it's an invitation for us to meet ourselves. It's an invitation to see why this is here. What is this allowing us to see? What is this inviting us into? This is one of the most potent questions that we can ask ourselves. And sometimes we don't have the answers to that. Sometimes it can feel really vague or unknown or uncertain, and yet it is here. It is here. And until we meet it, until we begin to continue to listen to it or we resist it, we're not going to have the answer. So, the invitation for you and those of you that are listening, pay attention. Be here. Be in the listening to what is before you. Because whatever that is, it's here to teach you something. It's here to show you something. It's here to help you grow if you're open to receiving it. And this is why we really want to shift away from much of the victim consciousness, where we want to come into a creator consciousness, or how I like to think of it as a co-creation, a co-creator, because we are co-creating this reality both with each other and with something bigger than ourselves and other forces and beings within this dimension. So we need to be aware that we're in co-creation, that we're bringing into fruition different realities by the thoughts we have, by the actions we take, by the feelings we create. And I say feelings that we create, and that can be dependent upon our mood, that can be dependent upon the thoughts we have or the actions we take, and they can shape our feelings and the other way around. So we need to be discerning on what we're creating and even the content we're consuming. That's really going to impact all of those things as well. And so, why we want to move away from the victim consciousness is that it doesn't allow you to come into an empowered state of being. And as you can say, that's why it's called the victim. And this isn't to say that the emotions and the stories associated with that aren't welcome. And this can be the trap for a lot of people when they say, oh, I'm not going to be a victim. So they don't allow the part of themselves that is the victim to express. They deny and shut it down. And what this does is trap that within themselves. It doesn't allow life force to flow. And if you're familiar with my work by now, and if you're listening to this, I hope you are, Weird Waves, because I've talked on this before. If you're shutting down an aspect of yourself, you're shutting down life force, you're shutting down energy, even if it's a victim level of consciousness, because that victim needs guidance, it needs support, it needs love, it needs to be seen and witnessed so it can grow and evolve. And when we shut it down, what it does, it suppresses it into the shadow, it denies it and shuts it away in the dark where it plays into the unconscious. So we want to be coming at this with consciousness. So when I say we want to move away from victim consciousness, it's not denying the parts of ourselves that can present themselves as a victim. You may have an experience and then you start thinking, poor me, why did this happen to me, etc., and so on. And that can be really powerful to allow that to actually express. This can be one of the most powerful and healing things. And this may be asking a friend to witness, this may be talking in nature and giving that voice a space to actually exist so you can get to know it and then be like, oh, is any of that true? No. Okay, what can we do from here? But if there's an emotional charge tapped into that victim, and I will say this, that a lot of people have a lot of anger there. They have a lot of built up resentment or anger or frustration, which is why at times we need to allow it. If there's been a victimized child or a victimized self and it hasn't been expressed, well, it's trapped in that state and it's trapped all that energy that could otherwise be used for some other creation. But that can't happen until the victim is acknowledged and seen and held in such a way where it can be healed. Now, because there is very real things that can make us a victim in this reality. There's pains, there's sorrows, there's atrocities where there is victims. And that is completely okay. It's if you've been hurt, you may have been a victim to an act. And that's okay. It's not wrong to have a victim around that. It's to actually acknowledge that and take ownership of that. You were victimized, you were attacked, you were whatever it was that needs you to own it, allows you to heal that. It's from that point to accept that and then realize you don't need to stay in that state. What can happen for a lot of people is they get stuck in the victim mentality and the victim state because they actually deny it. This is where the shadow suppression of the victim becomes overpowering and acts out unconsciously because they want it to be seen and loved so they can move the energy associated with that. So we're wanting to shift away from the victim running the show. If we're looking at consciousness and the psyche, what we need to see is that there's different aspects of the self that exist at all times. There can be the child, you could go like very king, warrior, magician, lover, you could go the wild woman, the priest, the priestess, all these different archetypal elements that can live within the self. And they can all exist, but there's this awareness that who wants to be the operator in the show, who wants to be running the show. And this is why a lot of us need to do parts work and integral theory where we're bringing these aspects to ourselves, firstly, to be known and then accepted and loved so they can come into congruence with the greater whole. This is what we're trying to do in a lot of aspect in work where we're asking to meet ourselves in different ways and bringing them home. So when we do this, we can begin to shift from a more victim state because we're creating a more empowered I, a sense of self, someone great, someone who can embody all of themselves so there's a greater wholeness and they can have access to different dimensions of themselves that can serve at different times. So, what I mean by that is the warrior may be needed to fight a battle or protect someone, while the lover may be used in relationship to make love and connection and intimacy. And it's not like we're saying, now I'm in my warrior and now I'm in my lover. There should be a fluidity to move in between all of them because there wants to be a connectedness and interconnectedness. Otherwise, it can be very boxy and disconnected, and it hasn't allowed energy to flow between them. So we're wanting to create a sense of wholeness. And what happens as we move further and further away from victim consciousness is that we can take these learnings as lessons. So we can begin to see that what is presented in our reality is here to teach us something. It's here to invite us into the next stage of our evolution. And you may not know exactly what that is right away, but when you're in that victim mentality, well, you'll complain and resent what is occurring. You'll be saying, this is bad, this shouldn't be happening, I don't want this to be occurring. And that creates a resistance which stops you accepting and allowing you to grow with what is actually here. So when you come at it from an empowered belief system or an empowered sense of self, you'll see this is happening. Okay, maybe there's a reason why this is here for me. Maybe there's a lesson, or maybe there's a teaching, or maybe there's something I'm needing to learn that is presenting itself within this situation. This is because the universe is always asking you to grow. It's always asking you to embody a greater sense of self, a greater wholeness, because there's different forces in the universe, and there's one that is seeking wholeness, love, and connection and intimacy, and like the unity of everything, and that involves the unity of ourself. So there's this force that is inviting you into deeper and deeper levels of awareness so you can hold a deeper consciousness within this realm. And there's this trust that force is guiding you towards a deeper sense of self. Now, how it presents may not always be uh, amicable to what you want. It may feel devastating. It may feel painful. It may feel trapping. It may feel disconnecting. But sometimes we need to break down the rigid limitations or the rigidity of our systems or our condition to allow a deeper sense in. And this can include heartbreak, it can include grief. And this isn't to say that, everyone that is in pain deserves their pain, but it's in this awareness that if we use it in the right way, we can use it for growth and awareness and continue to a greater sense of self, a greater awareness, and a greater wholeness. Now, I believe that we can co-create our reality, and there is forces outside of us that can act upon us as well. And it's only at very high levels of awareness where you can go beyond that. And most people aren't at that stage where it's like, no, I only create my reality. This can be actually disempowering if you get stuck in this, because you can be stuck in a constant analyzing of everything, and you can have analysis paralysis where you're just trying to work it out. How did I create it? What did I do? And there can be a perpetuation of the self blame or the self criticism, which may stem from a childhood or conditioned culture where you believed you were responsible for everything. And there's this acknowledgement that though you are responsible for what is presented, it may not have been your fault. There may be other factors at play. You are only one person in a world of 9 billion or so. So while you are creating, there's 9 billion other creations taking place, and they can impact on one another. And without this awareness, you may be like, well, clearly I did something wrong when this happened. No, maybe other people were just creating something that you affected you in this way. And this is the awareness that we need to consider, especially as we're going into the realm of collective creations and what we're creating as a collective. And there's some big forces at play in the world right now where a lot of collective consciousness can be pointed in different directions. And this is how media and art and social media and culture can really impact consciousness because they can direct it in certain ways. There can be a lot of fear created by the media, which then creates a survival pattern in people where they're more fear based and then they're creating from fear, and that takes them further into survival. It's what I said earlier in this episode where you may be stuck, and I forget what exactly I said. I actually forget what I said. Um, but I said something earlier about that. So you're going to have to go back and rewind to that because I can't recall right now. I'm in the channel. But we want to have an awareness of what we are creating because without that, well, you don't know how you're impacting others as well. There's this idea that thought forms exist, and if you're aware of energetics, you will have felt them. That when people think about certain things in different places, that energy becomes dominant within a space. In different say, environments, different thought forms are common. When in open spaces, there's less density of them, but in built up areas, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of intensity, there's a lot of people thinking, and so you can feel a lot of people's energies. And if that is not in what you want to create, maybe you should take yourself out of that environment because it's not going to serve you. It's not going to be what's good for you. So you want to be aware of where you're taking yourself and what you're creating through your own behaviors and actions and how that's impacting others, because we can do this work for good. We can do this for um, a nefarious agenda, which I'm not for, and I highly suggest that you don't be for either. And this is why we're doing this game of consciousness where we're continuing to evolve. So we may be in service to something greater than ourselves. So we may be in service to love, because ultimately that is what the universe is asking of us. It's the continuation of the fight between good and evil. And I know that's a dualistic model of thinking, but I was thinking on this the other day. We need a lot more dualistic thinking where there is good and evil, because there is a lot of people trying to hold the non-dual that don't have the embodiment of duality down pat first. And until that is the case, until they have a realistic relationship with the duality, you cannot hold the non-dual. It is bypassing. And for a lot of people, they need to get in their bodies, they need to connect to this realm, they need to be in this reality before you can go into the non dual and everything's okay and everything's love. No, there is good and there is evil, and on this plane of consciousness, that exists. And on higher realms, that can differ, but most of us aren't holding that. So begin to understand, what do you see as good and evil? What do you stand for? And how are you shaping this reality that moves it in that direction? It may be just being kind to someone, having a smile. It may be having a kind word or asking someone how they are or creating more connection in your world. But you may need to consider, what forces are you acting in accordance with? What are you propagating within this world? Because are creating something and you need to be aware of what you're creating. This is why I shared a episode a few weeks ago, the power of spells and the words that you're speaking. Because yes, you're speaking spells, you're speaking awareness, you're propagating thought forms and energy into this world with the words that you say, and this is something you need to be aware of. A lack of awareness isn't going to serve you, and it's not going to serve this world. Yes, this means you will be required to grow and hold greater levels of awareness. That's going to be the continuation of this work. And I shared last week that if you do need to rest, and this is a repeat, you can have that. You can have a moment to rest and recharge and go do what you need to do to come back so you can be at a greater capacity. This is a balance of serving yourself and serving the world. So just a little tangent there because it's needed to say, so we don't have a lot of martyrs who believe they must self-sacrifice themselves so the world can be better. That is not the way. That is not the way. So weird ways. Find the way for yourself. This is really what I want to propagate here is that you can find the way, and the way will be nuanced to you. And why that is really important, because no one can tell you the exact way it's going to be for you. I love story, I love myth, I love anything that can help me understand myself. And this is why I teach about stories, it's because they have so much wisdom and guidance in them. But there's a knowledge that you don't want to get stuck in a different story or another person's story, or even the stories of your own mind. Be aware that they are all creations, and what energy you're putting into them will continue to create it. So you may want to create something else. If your stories aren't serving you, find new ones. Find a different story that helps you live a different way, that feels empowering, that inspires you, that helps you feel more connected to your heart so you can share that in this world. That's really what I want for you, because can all have that. We can all move towards that. And this is how we build a new culture. It isn't through yelling and screaming, so that there might be times where we need to do that to, allow more of us online. But it will be through this awakening of connection to ourselves and the continued evolution of consciousness, where we can see and meet ourselves at the depths that we need to share what we're here to be and help others create that as well. So, Weird Ways, I love you. Thank you all for joining me this week. Have a beautiful night.